by film.
5,
Stand by music.
4,
Stand by announce.
3, 2, 1.
And fade up.
Fish are friends, not food.
Make it Centauri time.
Too much iron on your blood.
Buddy the Elf, what's your favorite color? Hey, what happened? Let's fly!
Let's get pissed and watch boom.
Hello, you've got a base.
Are you saying there's something wrong with my gear?
We're going streaking!
He found me!
He's doing his Superman thing.
That still only counts as one!
Why is the rum always gone?
All right, well, welcome to a brand new episode of 20 Years, 4 Beers. We are a podcast dedicated to rewatching movies from 2 decades ago while simultaneously enjoying a minimum of 4 modern beers. My name is Steve, and this is my big brother,
Tim.
And we are coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. In this very special episode, we celebrate our 75th recording.
Ooh, nice.
The third quarter quill, if you will. Recording with another special look back, further back into the time capsule of film and go back 30 years to 1993. So in this episode of 30 Years, 4 Beers, we will rewatch a film that we have referenced many times as a seminal moment in our love of film. And we will be, Tim and I will be rewatching Jurassic Park. But before we jump in, we discuss some newer films or TV that we are watching, including another film that we saw together. Rarely that we've seen a couple in the theater, I think, recently, right? Didn't we?
Yeah, we saw Guardians 3.
There it was. Yeah. And then another one next week. So, Tim, what have you been watching?
Well, you can start with the movie you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Indiana Jones 5, or Indiana Jones on the Dial of Destiny. Density. Yeah. I tell you, for me, this is just an absolute delight of a film. I know there's like some vitriol sometimes around it, but as is everything, there was with The Flash, there is with most. And while it's not as good as The Last Crusade or obviously Raiders, it is easily the third best overall, in my opinion. And I am looking forward to seeing it again. Are there things that are over the top? And is the de-aging just okay? Yeah. Do I care? Yeah, absolutely not.
No.
And I think we talked about this before, but it was like, if you can be okay with faces melting by a deity, hearts being ripped from living people, and a 500-year-old knight, but not be okay what happens in this film, then I don't want to talk to you about it. Like, I was like, yeah.
It's a bridge too far.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can F right off. So I gave it like 3.5 out of 5, but totally enjoyable. So
I'm excited to see it. I wish I had time recently to see it, but yeah, I'm very excited to see it.
It'll be on Disney Plus soon enough.
Woo! I'll buy it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Add it to my collection of the 4 Indiana Jones movies.
There are 4. Look at you. And then the only thing I will say is, because do you have anything else besides the movie?
I haven't had time to.
I will say, like, I want to apologize to any of the people who have recommended Suits to me over the years, and I've just ignored them.
Scoffed at
and just been like, whatever, it's just another USA show. But apparently me and like half the country have been rewatching or watching Suits on Netflix, because it's been like
number one
all
show,
over social
whatever,
media, and number one show. And I don't want to go too far into the weeds on it, but totally enjoyable. I'm almost done with season 5. I started like 2 weeks ago. So, nice. I mean, clearly, I'm not going to say it's an all-time great or anything like that, but totally enjoyable show. So like definitely check it out.
The hype is worthwhile.
Yeah. So anyway, Tim, what did we watch this week?
This Wednesday, we went to opening night of Mission Impossible.
What is opening night anymore? Because it opened on Wednesday, but then there are showings at 5 on Tuesday. Yeah. Like, stop it.
Exactly. They all have these, like, wishy-washy metrics for when things are starting and stopping. But we went to go see Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Part 1.
And I will say it's it's super enjoyable.
Totally.
You know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And if you've liked any of the other ones, especially the most recent ones, it lives up to them. It's super enjoyable. What they do with 2.5 hours of crazy complex plot. And like twists and turns and just the action. Yeah. Super. And we talked about, are there things you laugh at and go, this is so stupid? Yeah.
Yeah.
At times. But overall, like, can't believe he's 61 years old.
I know. But again, there's a difference between absurdity that you earn and absurdity that you don't. And this was the big problem with, say, Indiana Jones 4, is the absurdity wasn't earned.
Yep.
Because in the first 10 minutes, he's in a atomic blast and survives only by being in a lead-lined refrigerator. And you're like, you haven't earned this level of absurdity
with
yet.
No cushioning, throws him like a mile.
And then he rolls around. And, I mean, it's like, whereas, like, because if you think about Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, when he and Simon Pegg, when whatever his name is in the Benji, they're in that car, and then it like flips over and over and over again. I'm like, you would be dead or like, this is absurd.
Exactly.
But you have earned that absurdity up until that point.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest difference.
Totally agree.
No, I agree. I think to me, the Mission Impossible films are what the Fast and Furious movies wish they could be.
Totally.
And the films have become more and more about protecting your found family as we age.
Yep.
And more than about protecting just America's interests. And I think what I've discovered in the last like couple movies is that they've gone more towards protecting the world versus protecting like the sanctity of American values. Don't get me wrong, I like the Jack Ryan movies and the show and things like that, but a lot of those are about protecting America's interests.
Yep.
And I like that the Impossible Mission Force is about that, but it's really about when the other agencies can't handle that means something got bigger and they got to step in.
Yes.
I really like that it's not rah USA.
Totally.
Like they've gone away from that completely.
Absolutely.
In fact, none of them really about that.
No.
So I absolutely cannot recommend the movie enough, though.
And the only quibble I have is we talked about.
Yeah.
Hollywood has done a disservice to Haley Atwell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She is so awesome in this movie. Like, she's been great in everything she's been in.
Yeah.
But totally underserved in terms of what she could do.
Yeah. Underused as Peggy Carter, right?
Yes.
And
and Agent Carter, like, fine. And nothing against her as an actress. She's fine. She held her own and then some with Tom Cruise in this. And as a new entrant into the series.
Yep.
So freaking awesome.
Yeah. And like, again, I think we talked about this with Last Samurai, like, much respect to Tom Cruise, who's like apparently making this personal mission to make sure movie theaters survive in this world. Now, granted, he probably has enough money, he could just buy them all and just, run them. But it's absurd what he's been doing in the last couple of years to try and make sure that film in cinema survives.
It was busy.
Oh, yeah.
It was really busy.
We were like the youngest people in the balcony. I was like, we're in our 40s and we were on the young side of the audience. I was very surprised at
agree.
The audience.
The makeup.
It reminded me of, I think we've talked about this in the past, but when I saw Tropic Thunder and it was like I was the youngest person and it was a bunch of old people and I was like, I think these people think this is
you may be misunderstood
Vietnam movie here. So I was like, do they know what they're getting into? I had that with I saw No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence, which I won't go into the review on that, but like right to my left were like people in their 70s.
Jeez.
And I was like, do you think you're at do you think you're Indiana Jones? Like, are you in the wrong theater? And
this de-aging is really effective.
Folks, you know what you're in, right? And I was like, okay. And but to their credit, and they were with two friends. So it was this two, and they like we were two, and they were laughing the whole way through. I was like, man, I hope I'm like that when I'm in my 70s. All right. Well, as mentioned on this episode, we are going to be rewatching yet another little known indie film in Jurassic Park. Not sure if you've heard of it, but it's been our mission to
look it up.
Make sure people find these little films like Whale Rider. So I'm very tempted to just say, you know this movie, and if you don't, then please stop listening and go back to the cave that you just came out of.
How do you decorate the cave?
I don't need a plot point, a synopsis, but I guess the very basic plot here is that a small group of people are brought to an island by a wannabe Walt Disney, who has created a way to bring dinosaurs back from extinction and desires to open a theme park. The group is skeptical, naturally, and their skepticism comes to fruition and things predictably go off the rails. The group must now survive and find a way off the island before they are all eaten. Eaten. The film is directed by Steven Spielberg, written by David Coop, and stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Sir Richard Attenborough, Joseph Mazzello, Ariana Richards, and Samuel L. Jackson.
Gee, the lack of humility before nature that's being displayed here. staggers me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Malcolm, but I think things are a little bit different than you and I had feared.
Yeah, I know. They're a lot worse.
Now, wait a second. Now, we haven't even seen the part where
Don't let him talk. There's no reason. No, I want to hear every viewpoint. I really do.
Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
It's hardly appropriate to start hurling generalizations.
If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Our first segment, as always, then, is Drinking Buddies.
Come on, not my beer.
Where we present the beers we will be drinking while rewatching our subject film. As our name would suggest, we cover 4 beers. Tim will be walking us through our buddies for tonight, so take it away, Tim.
I must say, this was one of the easiest
it's really easy.
times I've had at the liquor store walking through. Yeah. And all our theme beers, and it was like, doop, doop, doop.
And dinosaurs are popular, man.
You don't realize until you're looking at like, dinosaurs are everywhere.
Yep.
So yeah, first one we have, and actually this is one I've wanted to try for a while. I just never got around to it. Off Color Brewing out of Chicago. Mm-hmm. Their Apex Predator, which as we know, back in the day, T-Rex, Apex Predator. It is their farmhouse style ale. Mm-hmm. So go try that. Oh, I clipped my fingernails. I can't get it. Okay, there we go. Then we have from Junkyard Brewing out of Moorhead, Minnesota, their Pulposaurus New England style IPA, hopped with Citra and Eldorado, with a nice little T-Rex scarfing down an orange slice in the can. And then what happens when the mosquitoes get stuck in amber?
Oh, you mean in sap? They become amber.
They get trapped. Well, I was looking for an amber, but those are so boring beers.
Yeah.
And they're really not, like, outside of Alaska amber.
Yeah.
But they get stuck.
Oh, I see where you went here.
So, yeah, I should have said what happens when they get trapped.
Yeah.
They get stuck. I totally blew that.
I would rewind it, but now we're not.
Dang it.
Yep.
Sticky Puddles from Lupulin Brewing out of Big Lake, Minnesota. It's kind of their perennial cycle through a different type of imperial sours.
So far. Yep.
They have this version as a pina colada with pineapple and coconut cream flavor. Let's go try that. So yeah, they're Sticky Puddles. And then an all-time classic.
You had to, yeah.
I was like, this low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
Toppling Goliath out of Decorah, Iowa. Old stomping grounds. They're King Sue double IPA with a giant T-Rex on it that helps the Field Museum, I guess, with
it was either that or Pseudo-Sue. Either one has a dinosaur
T-Rex on it.
I was like, you have to.
So I was like, well, those are going to be our drinking buddies for this evening.
That brings us to the social network.
If you guys were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
Where we take a look back at the critical and fan reception from 30 years ago. Tim takes point on this. I'm imagining we're going to... just in general, I imagine... There's going to be pretty much glowing reviews across the board from us, from the people, but I'm sure you sought out a negative one. But Tim, what did we get for the critics?
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, it's 91% rating.
Right.
Everything online. And so the IMDb is 8.2, which to me, I'm like, who are these 18% of idiots?
Yeah, that seems low to me.
Right? Yeah. Really dumb. I was like, that's not... That ain't right. And so I'll give you the one that I found. I think it encapsulates pretty much the majority. Yeah. And then we're going to have a little fun trip down memory lane of the idiots who did not see the genius of this movie.
Sure.
Caroline Westbrook of Empire Magazine said, cliche or no, there's no getting around it. Quite simply, Jurassic Park is one of the greatest blockbusters of all time. Mm-hmm. She got it right away. However, some I laughed at. Jay Scott of Globe and Mail said, Jurassic Park has a thrill or two and a chill or three, but it has no poetry, little sense of wonder, no resonant subtext, no art. Okay. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, kick Jay in the dick.
Yeah, you suck. Terrence Rafferty of New Yorker said, for all the ingenuity of the movie's engineering, Jurassic Park doesn't have the imagination or the courage to take us any place we haven't been 1,000 times before. It's just a creature feature on amphetamines. How's that a bad thing? Dave Anson of Newsweek magazine said Jurassic Park doesn't have organic flow and it can't disguise its clunky B-movie soul. And then Roger Ebert. Care to guess what he gave it?
3 out of 4?
He did.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a longer one, but I think it encapsulates some of it, but it's still disappointing. On the monster movie level, the movie works and is entertaining. Jurassic Park delivers all too well in its promise to show us dinosaurs, for we see them early and often, and they are indeed a triumph of special effects artistry. This is my favorite part. These are shown in 2 especially effective set pieces. A scene where a beast mauls a car with screaming kids inside, and another where the kids play hide and seek with 2 creatures in the park's kitchen. I think you're underselling it, Raj. However, the movie is lacking other qualities, which it needs even more, such as a sense of awe and wonderment, and strong human story values, for the human characters are a ragtag bunch of half-realized, sketched-in personalities who exist primarily to scream, utter dire warnings, and outwit the monsters. You want great dinosaurs? You'll get great dinosaurs, but the film could have been so much more. And those are the idiots of the idiot row.
Before you go into the Oscars part of this, I will say, objectively speaking, when you talk about this being a glorified B movie or like some of the plot, like there are real problems with this movie from a storytelling standpoint, from an editing standpoint. I get it.
Yes.
But to be so full of yourself to not understand
what you're watching.
What you're going into here is just like, ugh, come on. But
exactly.
Anyway, yeah.
And we'll talk about that in some of the
rest.
I get the broad brush elements, but you are just naive to what you're seeing. And then Academy Awards that year had 3 nominations, in which it won all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects.
Yep. I was a little surprised. Oftentimes you look back at Oscars and there's a special award that they give out for like, I don't remember if T2 had that, but I don't want visual effects. But sometimes there's always like a special recognition award.
I think it was for The Abyss.
Yeah. Some sort of thing that's like, and maybe maybe it's hindsight being what it is, but I was a little surprised to not have some sort of special award, but whatever.
I was 13. You were what, 11? 10?
Yeah.
Like,
yep,
even us idiots
June of 93
knew that we were seeing something completely new.
I saw it 3 times that weekend. It's the first time I've ever done that. So yeah, we'll come back to that.
Oh my God.
So, all right. Well, there we go. We are going to pause and rewatch the movie if you are so inclined, and you haven't watched it in a while. You should go right ahead and watch along with us. If not, we'll see you on the other side of this break. Here now is Jurassic Park.
Alan, this species of Variformin's been extinct since the Cretaceous period. I mean, this thing is about this thing. What?
It's a dinosaur.
You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did it.
You just tear up the rule book on it. Cold-bloodedness, it doesn't apply. They're totally wrong. This is a warm-blooded creature.
This thing doesn't live in a swamp.
This thing's got, what, a 25, 27-foot neck? Brachiosaurus 30.
With this place.
How fast are they? Well, we clocked the T-Rex to 32 miles an hour.
T-Rex?
Mm-hmm.
You said you've got a T-Rex?
Uh-huh.
Say again.
We have a T-Rex.
Put your head between your knees.
Dr. Grant. My dear Dr. Sattler. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
They're moving in herds. They do move in herds. How'd you do this? I'll show you.
All right, well, welcome back to 20 Years, 4 Beers, or 30 Years, 4 Beers for this episode, where we have just finished rewatching Jurassic Park and also have enjoyed 4 new beers that we will review in a segment coming up. But first, as usual, we jump right into our reaction segment that we call Spotlight.
They knew, and they let it happen!
Where we highlight and discuss our top takeaways of any kind from rewatching the film. Spoiler alert, it will be positive. Although I still wish we could find a way to record while we watch, because
we had fun with the quibbles.
There's some good quips and some it's there are quibbles with this. There are things, and we can cover that in a little bit. So, but why don't you get us started?
So I think it's one of those things where we think back to 1993, Friday night. Opening weekend,
yeah.
I believe it was second row.
Yep.
Right in the middle.
Eden Prairie West.
Because we had to, time-wise, we didn't get there in time like we need to, so we sit there. And it is easily, and I love always talking about it, the most formative movie-going experience of my life at like 13 years old. Of not believing how amazing this film was.
Sure.
And that experience and that Friday night. And you had mentioned, well, we'll talk about your experience. So we saw it Friday night, floored. I remember going to Target the next day and buying the book.
Oh, sure.
And reading it nonstop that Saturday, front to back, and then seeing it again Sunday. Because it was that type of, I cannot believe how amazing this is.
Wait. This movie came from this book? Like, these are two different things.
I've never... who's this Michael Crichton guy?
Yeah, but these are two totally different... Yeah.
Yes.
And then, wildly different stories.
And, like, the essence is still there.
Yeah, no, totally.
But then seeing it again and comparing it, that to me is not just the formative movie-going experience, but also the idea of seeing a film, reading the adaptation, having the idea of who the characters are visually in the book, the differences, and then seeing it again to compare it. It still stands out to me as far as like the 3 greatest days of a movie reading experience of my entire life.
Right.
And it will never be surpassed.
No, it can't be.
So I'm totally biased, admittedly, for this movie. But
so like it's interesting to think back to what 1977 was Star Wars.
Yeah.
And obviously it's before our time. Or 78. And
no, 77.
Yeah, so like back then, movie theaters were not multiplexes. They were typically 1 or 2 theaters or a couple, right? Yep. And people would line up around the block, and there's all these stories about lining up around the block and all this stuff. Same with Jaws in 75. And, this is the closest thing that our generation has to a Star Wars story.
Absolutely.
Of just like, it was packed. It was packed all weekend. It was packed every weekend. It was packed every night. It was just full all the time.
Yep.
Everyone talked about it. Like, it was, and for the generation prior to us, Jaws and Star Wars were those movies that were like seminal movie-going experiences to not only for those who were creators, that they wanted to do that, for people who just wanted to enjoy movies, like they wanted to do that again.
Yeah.
And they were fortunate enough to have it a few years later with E.T. and all this other stuff for Raiders. Like, they had a really good run of it. But for us, it was like this. It was
absolutely.
It was it. This was it. Especially for multiplexes, because then you could have Jurassic Park on 4 screens at a place or whatever it was. And so, yeah, I'm the same way. Like it's such a warm memory that will never be surpassed.
Right.
And it's not, and each generation has their version of that. And even modern generations will have their version of that in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
But streaming does sort of change the game when it comes to those experiences, for sure. But yeah, I remember, we were like the only 3 spots we had for the 3 of us were second row. There it was.
Was it you, me, and Dad?
Yes. EP West.
And I remember like hating at first, like, oh, it's so huge sitting up front like that.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, again, that memory of immersive and overwhelming the experience.
Yeah, and so I remember
in a good way.
Right, and we talked so I particularly love the Fablemans that came out last year.
Sure.
And when he has that story of, or when he like shows himself as a kid going to the greatest show on earth.
Yeah.
And like having that just sort of in awe thing. And you got to respect a filmmaker who has that experience as a kid and then wants to grow up and do those things. And then other people did that with Star Wars, and other people did it with his movies. And like, there's a whole generation of filmmakers who saw this in 1983 and were like, I want to do that. And for each one of us who saw it and enjoyed it, we didn't turn it, like, I wanted to do that, but we didn't turn it into like making home movies and doing our own thing, but like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, some get that itch and then turn it around and like get all the way to the end, and not everyone else does. But it's just, boy, it was hard to go to the movie theater that weekend and not like, well, think about, I mean, not to make it not personal for us, but we always loved watching movies. Yeah. You and me growing up. And like we just thoroughly enjoyed it. But I don't know that I can remember seeing a movie in the theater before this movie. I know we did. Like an American Tail. I know I remember having a visceral experience to how traumatizing that was in the theater. And I don't know, but we watched a lot of movies at home. Yeah. Rented a bunch, enjoyed it, seeing some, especially Spielberg. But this, I truly have like a fiber in my being of remembering that experience of this is what movie going can be like. Yeah, I mean,
it just was amazing.
Right. I have memories of like seeing Little Mermaid or Aladdin or Home Alone and some of those in theater.
That's true.
Like I have those memories, but those aren't formative. Those weren't ones that were like, I want to do this.
Yes.
Like we had seen animated movies. Like I remember seeing Bambi on the re-release. Like it was those kind of things. But you're like, oh, okay, those are enjoyable. But you don't turn around. Those are kids' movies. Those are animated movies. And while we love those movies, those are not like what this is in terms of like that reactionary, this is doing something. And it was probably our first like scary, suspenseful movie too. And
very much so.
And that brings you into it if done well.
Yes.
So, I mean, there is some of that too.
Speaking of scary. So, talking through that lens. So, follow me on the journey here. So last summer, when my children were 6 and 9, they were adamant of watching this. And we've talked about in many different ways the worry we have as parents introducing our kids to films at maybe the right age. Yeah. To feel like, God forbid, it's either too early or
it was too
late.
early when I first did it with my kid.
Yeah. I remember watching Star Wars, the New Hope with the kids, and there was like 20 minutes and they're like, I think we're done. I'm like, no, please. But again, it's a tough 20 minutes opening. Yep. So it's like always that weird day. And then we've tried to watch E.T. and they got done like an hour in, like, we don't want to watch anymore. I was like, oh, like all these things you have that like connection to, you're like, please,
my kid
please.
Just not particularly like E.T.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I don't want that. Yeah. Last summer, I remember they were like just dying to watch it. Yeah. And my wife and I were like, no, because of that fear factor, the scariness. And I must admit, it was a bit of a turn for me as a parent being like, all right, effers, you want to watch this? Let's do it. And I remember sitting down here and we watched it and they were terrified. Like viscerally, like at the T-Rex scene, which we'll talk about a little bit later, they were sobbing and they wanted to stop. They were like, I don't want to watch. And our family rule is we will finish it. We're not going to stop at the worst part because I can't leave you in that experience. You have to see it through as well as like the kids survive. I'm spoiling everything for them. And they slept in our beds, which they never do. Like they were beside themselves. And it was the funny experience as a dad watching it being like, you know what? Maybe listen to me.
Right.
As a dad to be like, I know when this might be appropriate for you. And we still talk about it. Like they were just again, a different formative experience.
Yeah, exactly.
For them of I purposely traumatized them to experience this, but we still talk about it. Or Ev, my son, will sing the music sometimes.
Yeah.
And so like he and myself, I still like we'll watch it again when it has more like less concern, I guess less concern. But yeah, I still think about how impactful this was for them. And it was great to watch as a parent through a parent lens that I don't know, I hadn't ever had that experience before, like with Dr. Grant and these kind of things at the time. But it was a funny, different flip on the other side of the coin of what you and I experienced in the theater.
Right.
And the terrifying, because I think you probably were the same age roughly as my daughter was. Close enough. Yeah. But very different reactions.
Yeah.
Where you were like, I want to see this 3 times this weekend. And she's like, I will never see it again.
I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this in our next episode with Dazed and Confused on the differences of youth now versus then.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. But there's also a difference of one thing that streaming has somewhat ripped us of. And don't get me wrong, we're all lazy and we like to watch at home, but to a certain extent has ripped us of the movie going experience.
Yeah.
And really feeling that like emotion. And I can't pause this. I can't leave the theater. I mean, I can, but I can't. There is no safety from this.
Yes.
So now there's that level of like, I gotta ride this out.
I'm in it.
I've paid my money. I'm here. We're going to do this. And there is some truth to that, you know. I mean, to give Tom Cruise credit, like we did earlier, like there is something about being in the theater, and streaming has sort of robbed us of that to the point of like, oh, I'll just wait 2 months and it'll be on it'll be on streaming. Like I don't have to worry about waiting 6 to 9 months for this to be on video, as it was back in the day.
Yeah,
you really felt like you were missing something if you didn't go see this movie in those first couple weekends.
I bought Guardians 3 last weekend.
Right, and it came out
2 months after we saw it.
Yep.
Exactly. So I totally agree.
And that's fine on one level. It is totally fine on one level. Don't get me wrong. If you do it right, you do it right.
Yes.
But there are just experiences that can only be, we saw Interstellar at IMAX. We're going to see Oppenheimer next week at IMAX. Like, there's just some things that can't be replaced. And there are some things, like with our kids, that even mine is like, I'll wait for Indiana Jones. I'm like, do you want to go see that? I'll see it again. And he's like, no, I'll wait another month or whatever. He knows that he can just wait.
Yep.
So there is that safety of being in your own home that you didn't have 30 years ago now.
Yes.
So
see it. All right. So enough about us old folks waxing poetic about these things. So talk about the movie here. I really think the Mr. DNA explanatory sequence is, and some of the criticism or social network stuff before I talked about like a high level, B movie and not much character, like fine. And there's some broad strokes in this movie, which it has to be because the book is really dense and complex. But that sequence of Mr. DNA explaining to the audience and again, by proxy, the paleontologist, botanist, and the chaotician in that room of like, how would you accomplish this?
Right.
It's one of, I think, the best examples of an engaging, dense exposition.
Yeah.
Where you take all these elements into a tiny little element and you have animation, details, where I still remember seeing it in the theater and being like, I get this now. I understand what this is about. And the cloning technology, the DNA sequence, you have these things spliced together. Cool.
Sure.
In a short window, and it explains the complex science behind it, and we move on.
Yeah,
and that's
let's
I
just
think
accept it. Yep.
Yes, it's just a great thing of you got the primer and we're moving on, and they have the sequence and they move around, and that I think is a really great testament to the writing and the execution of it with direction and everything, where you can take heavy sci-fi stuff in the midst of fun, escapism. Let's get into the weeds, and then we're done. So I always love that sequence.
Oh yeah, to the point where I've seen him in person and online. There are Mr. DNA tattoos. Like,
really?
Like Mr. DNA is, because it's a way to like express. If you see Mr. DNA, it is unequivocally from Jurassic Park.
Yep.
And you're just like, it holds more depth than you would think necessarily. Yes. Yeah, it's a very pivotal scene. I just, part of me says, like, what can you say about this movie that hasn't already been said? You know what I mean? There's no hidden depths we're going to uncover here.
Yeah.
There's no research that has happened.
I never
or interviews
noticed this.
Did you notice this? I literally watched this less than a month ago.
Yeah.
For its 30th anniversary. Like I watch it annually pretty much, and I have no problem with that.
Yep.
But so yeah, what can we say about this? We do our best here, but I will say, like, coming off of that, I guess the one thing that has to be said, and it's said every time, we've talked about it over the last couple of years in comparison to like X-Men and some of the other movies with visual effects. There is no denying the visual effects in this movie are groundbreaking. Is even, like, we talked about Abyss already and Terminator 2 and this. Like, there are 3 films from the late 80s, early 90s. Are there quibbles like what we just mentioned with the Velociraptor at the end, where he's got like the reflection from the light and it's all letters, like you can see it.
Yes.
Sure, there are things like that.
Yeah.
But even then, I still will admit, and it happens every time, when the Brachiosaurus shows for the first time and the music comes across, I tear up every time.
I was doing the same thing.
Every time. I watched it a month ago, a year ago, it doesn't matter. And it's not, the music is so good, and we'll come back to that, but like, the visuals still hold up. We are not talking about, we're not talking about this in experience and then like, oh, I love this experience, but look at that dog shit animation right now. Like, I'm watching, Clash of the Titans or whatever, like, or Jason and the Argonauts, excuse me.
Yes.
Like,
good reference.
Yeah. The visuals, 90% of the visuals still hold up to this day.
Yep.
To the point, like, I just, are there things you could talk about? Yeah, but what you can also talk about is 93 and they had to develop this stuff.
Yep.
10 years after this, we're talking about movies, and we've talked about this in previous episodes of saying, like, this is 8 years after Jurassic Park and it's still screwed up because it couldn't be this good or whatever.
The Flash from a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Some of that.
Objectively really great.
Yes.
But some of it was like, this is really stupid.
It looks really bad.
And, maybe part of that is the uncanny valley. Like, as things go, try to get more realistic, it becomes further away, where they knew that they could only do this in some sort of like small bubble. I don't know. But visually speaking, 30 years on, nobody can watch this and go, oh, look at that garbage. Like, this is so those people who talk about a B movie, sure, there are B movie elements.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line between what they did from a B movie, and the dialogue's pretty terrible in some ways. But a B movie skimps on the visuals.
Yes.
And this just didn't. And so, love it.
Yeah. And that to me is you're right. The idea that we're watching this 3 decades later and we've seen good examples of the computer animation. And I think what always stood out and still resonates is the balance they always struck between the practical and digital.
Yep.
So they knew when it would work.
It all to be practical originally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And knowing it wouldn't work in some of the cases.
It just,
like Gallimimus Stampede, not going to work.
Yeah. And I mean, you go back and look at some of the scenes of what they had. They had footage of claymation and things for all these things. And it's just, as advanced as it was and as good as they did, boy, it just wouldn't have worked.
No. And so I still always think about that idea that, what is the effect being chosen and how is it serving the story and what makes sense? Because we suffered through Attack of the Clones in a previous episode, where it was always like, it was the style that was what was focused and nothing, like there was no substance. It was terrible.
Or Harry Potter with the troll. And
yes.
It hasn't held up in 20 years, let alone 30.
Yes.
Yep.
And side note, I was watching Guardians 3 again when it came out, and I listened to the director's commentary with James Gunn. Yeah. And he talked about his focus on blending the practical with the digital.
Yep.
Because it's what works for the tactile experience, the performance you want, knowing that it cannot be maybe captured in this way, so we'll rely on digital. So the back and forth. And I still think that's where movies really have that resonance where you can balance that together. And this was, I truly remember, like the first experience of that groundbreaking element where you could have, in one way, you could see the T-Rex foot stepping in front of the car with Grant and Lex. And then a sequence later, it's clearly digital, but it feels seamless. And that's what's great about it.
Yep.
Is that you never feel disconnected in so many of these things where I'm like, it didn't hold up. And the first thing of the Brachiosaurus walking, I will say, I'm like, oh yeah, it seems too glossy. And then everything thereafter is perfect.
Yeah, but even then, it's not even about realism. It's about not looking fake.
Yes.
There's that in between. Like,
yes.
I know it's fake. It's a freaking dinosaur walking through
exactly
the Hawaiian outback or whatever. Like, I get it.
Yes.
Like, so you can't make that look real because we don't know what real looks like.
No.
But what works, and I think this is the difference of, I was reading an article recently that said, so Oppenheimer, which comes out next week, that we'll talk about on our next episode, I'm sure.
Yep.
Oppenheimer has no CGI shots in it.
That's crazy.
But there's a fundamental difference here. There's a difference between CGI and visual effects.
Sure.
There's a completely fabricated image, like CGI.
Yeah.
This whole thing is digital. It's just not real.
Doesn't exist.
And it always looks fake. But then there's what this is, which is a visual effects shot that says, I'm going to take a real shot and I'm going to put this fake thing in said shot or make effects in this shot.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental difference here is none of these shots, because at that time it didn't exist that you could just create a fully digital world.
Yeah.
Like a fake world just without an actual camera shot. Like what we talk about with Attack of the Clones and those movies, like they could just create a full scene and not have to worry about like rolling a camera.
Yeah.
Well, that's bullshit.
Yes.
So the one thing about VFX is that, visual effects, you still need a real shot.
Yes.
To bring us into this. And, again, T2 and these movies understood that we're going to use this as a tool, and not the whole picture. Like it's just going to be a part of it, not the whole thing. So it's just, I think that was the difference.
Oh, Terminator 2. Oh my gosh. Another formative.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we didn't see it in theaters, but yeah.
That was the first time I remember thinking, oh, mom and dad were right to not let me watch an R movie too early. Because it was terrifying. Because of the practical, like it felt real. Anyway,
it does feel real.
Oh, so good.
Even though it's fake looking, it's within the world that we see is still real.
Yes. It holds up so good.
Yeah.
So the thing that I didn't like, so when we do this podcast, like, okay, not a critical lens, but like talking through it, whatever. What I really liked about this, seeing it tonight, was I don't know that I really took into consideration the awe of them first seeing the dinosaur, and then they go to how do we make it, and then they go to the dinner scene, and there's a hard pivot in that sequence where the awe and the wonder shifts real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that I ever really appreciated it until watching it again now, in the sense of you have this heavy balance of spectacle and excitement with the decompression that these characters feel of, do you know what you've truly done?
Yeah.
That I don't know. Again, I really put it together because, again, I was trying to placate the kids to be fine, but also just watching it earlier in life, it was just like, it's fun, it's spectacle. But seeing it now, and the idea that these characters are quickly coming to terms with the paradigm shift that has occurred.
Yeah.
And you've got...
Yeah, keeping in mind, none of them knew what they were getting into really coming into this. Although you think really Malcolm maybe had an idea.
Maybe.
But otherwise, they didn't know what they were coming into.
Yes. And having them in that dialogue talk through, especially Ian Malcolm, really hardcore of you don't fully realize what you've done.
Yeah.
And I really love that foreboding sense of the wonder, the awe, the spectacle that we're experiencing from an audience shifts really quick, and it plants the seed from the viewership of this is not going to go as you maybe think it will.
Yeah.
So then when they have the kids show up and you're like, oh, it's a lighthearted, fun thing, and the music's
They're
light.
not going to put
like,
kids in peril.
Yeah, how would you ever do like they're not going to be fun? And then you go on the tour, what I love is the slow turning of the screws.
Mm-hmm.
Where, okay, the weather's like all the foreboding elements coming together that, and we'll talk about it next, maybe, is when it comes to the T-Rex scene, you are primed of just being on the edge of your seat. So then when that scene happens, so I just think about like what they do to set it up well, where it's not just things are going great, and then here's a T-Rex scene. It's, we're going to make you be put on edge.
Yeah.
Because what are the ramifications of what they're talking about and everything. So then when it comes, and you see the Triceratops, and it's all these things like
cuddly dinosaurs. Yep.
Yeah, it's no big deal. And then when it shifts and it's quiet, just rain, and the boom, boom, and the vibration of the water, still remember how scared I was in the theater of this is not going to go well. So it's, anyway, I like what they did where it didn't feel like just a quick shift, is that it truly felt authentic that these characters who are in this field, two of them, would be initially in awe and then quickly move to like, this is not a good thing.
Right.
Not good.
Yeah. Who in mainstream film, non-horror edition, who has ever built tension like Spielberg does?
Absolutely.
Like,
yes.
Nobody I can think of. Again, I mean, so Spielberg would give credit to, say, Hitchcock or some of the John Ford and people who came before him. And I get that. Like everyone pays homage to people before, but they didn't have blockbuster films.
No.
They didn't, like, Spielberg literally created, for the most part, the summer blockbuster.
Absolutely. With Jaws. Absolutely.
Right. And who knows, like, just, I think about both Jaws, you think about Raiders, you think about E.T. and this, and you just go, there is nobody who knows better when to give us the release, whatever that is, whether it's Jaws popping out of the water for the first time, 3/4 of the way through the movie.
Come down here and
I'm just going to chum some of this shit. And, but like in this movie, we know, based on the previews, based on what you knew, this was going to go off the rails. You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But then each time you maybe think it's going to happen, you're kind of like, it teases a little bit, but you're 45 minutes to an hour in this movie before anything really goes wrong.
Yes.
Like, they knew you had to earn sort of that, like, level of respect towards the story and respect towards this is going to go. Nobody does tension like Spielberg in a blockbuster mainstream.
I totally agree.
Like, other people do, like, that's a different story, indies and that kind of stuff. Yes. And Nolan has his own thing. No, nobody does it better than Spielberg.
I totally agree. Where he has a unique ability from a mass audience standpoint to have the ability to bring people in and yet do something like this where you are on edge.
Well, he has, again, not to somewhat like paraphrase Malcolm, he stood on the shoulders of people who came in before him in terms of what came before him in movie making standpoint. And he is not, nobody would ever claim necessarily that Spielberg himself is like a trailblazer in anything or almost. But he takes what we know, what we love about movies, and says, I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to like make it almost an enhanced version of what we have.
Yep.
Because he loves the movies. So I don't know where you're going to go with the T-Rex scene though. Before you, like, where were you going to go with that?
I just wanted to talk about high level.
Yeah.
That attack sequence where he or it escapes.
Yeah.
I guess she.
Yeah, there you go.
Following the plot.
Hashtag feminism.
Yeah. Escapes. That sequence is truly one of the top 5.
Yeah.
If not top 3 movie scenes of all time.
Sure. Yeah.
In my view of like, it holds up. It is intense. And all
minus
the elements
fact that
come together.
obviously his vision is not based on movement. Like,
yes.
Like, come on.
Yes.
I know that was some of the prevailing theory at the time. It was like, really?
Yes. It'd be a terrible apex predator if it's just like, oh, you froze.
Where'd you go?
Oh, you froze. I don't know where you went,
Yeah.
man.
I mean, I guess it's raining, so theoretically there's movement everywhere.
There's distraction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway. Sorry.
But
all right.
It is because to the point where when the car gets pushed over the edge and Grant and Lex start descending into whatever moat gap thing, and you know it's not there because it wasn't there before.
Yeah.
You don't care.
You don't care.
You're just on the edge of your seat because the tension, and when I still get chills when they're trying to put the light through the ceiling.
Sure. Yeah.
And the T-Rex shoves his face, her face, into the car. And it is terrifying.
Yep.
And seeing Grant and Malcolm on the edge being like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to do?
Nothing we can do about this. Yeah.
It's hard to even, again, if you, I don't know, haven't seen it, whatever, but still, I will watch it over and over.
I have met someone recently who told me they have not seen this movie. And I was like, now, granted, she is 26. So, but I get it. But I'm like, all right. But even then, you were born, 4 years after this movie came out?
Sure.
And then before you ever even are old enough to watch it, you're 15 years on from the movie release. So I guess I understand it depending on your upbringing. But yeah, I was like, all right, whatever.
You can still, history exists prior to your birth.
I know.
You might enjoy it. But anyway, yes, I think that T-Rex attack sequence, blending the practical and the digital and the tension and again, Children in Peril will always work for me.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it in the theater from a child's lens.
Yeah, we were that age back then.
Terrified. Watching it now from a protective parent standpoint when Grant tries to save them and work through that, and the kid, it's unbelievable what they were able to accomplish in that sequence.
Yeah, It'll be a long one.
It's been a long episode.
Which is fine. I am always impressed. Like this, not even off of that. I'm always impressed at stunt performers' ability.
Yes.
To know exactly where the camera is at all times and how not to look at the camera.
Yes.
Obviously, with one notable exception in this, where she looks up and they swap faces. And so they had to swap faces or whatever, which was pretty unique at the time.
Yes. Pre-social network.
Right. And they do a pretty good job of it, actually. Yeah, pre-AI.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm so impressed with stunt performers' ability to like run through a scene and they're just looking at the right like angle and they just know where not to look. So you're kind of like, I know that's not you, you effer. Yeah. I know it's not you.
Your hair is different.
God, you just did it. You did a good job. I have one other point, which is about John Williams, but what do you...
I'll come back to him with you. So I always am amazed by the intimacy of the kitchen scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing to have the spectacle, and then speaking of like Spielberg,
sorry to interrupt you. Really, the intimacy of the last 30 minutes.
Yes,
because it's not a climax in a traditional sense of the world. That's what she said. But like, it is just. It is not a traditional sort of ending to a movie like this, where there's like it's very right.
Yes.
But yeah, the kitchen
sequence always held up.
Yeah,
where again, good kudos to you, Dr. Grant. Fine, you got them through, and you're like, I'm going to leave you here.
Bye.
Check you later. I'll come back. It's like, no, what are you doing?
Right.
So then that sequence where the kids are, because prior to that, it's just them surviving and Grant's primarily doing it. What I always loved about that was like the ingenuity of the kids coming together of like, how are we going to get out of this? And they go to the kitchen, and that sequence is so intense.
Yeah.
With my kids, they were terrified. And that was so great to see. And like Lex and Tim, it just, I don't know. That's where I feel like the graphics stood out.
Yeah.
Where you can have the benefit of them walking in. Anyway, so that kid is still, I love it. And Roger Ebert talked about like, oh, it's these two sequences. Sure. It's does not encapsulate how great those two are. Anyway, yeah, I want to talk about that. Okay, so really quick, one last thing I'll say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
I had no reference of this actor before this movie.
Well, and why would we have?
Like, I never saw The Fly or the stuff. Like, what's great about, like, maybe at the time these actors were big. I mean, Sam Neill, all of them have a presence of some sort.
Sam Neill was in The Piano.
Yeah.
And what's the boat one with Nicole Kidman and Billy Zane? Dead Calm. Like,
yeah.
He was in, like, a couple of movies up until
these were not
point.
huge marquee names.
No, Laura Dern with the family standpoint, sure.
Sure. But not to the level where these people were like what you're coming to see.
No.
But I still remember and still love Jeff Goldblum. To me, stands out amongst them all.
Of course.
Sam Neill, others were great.
Yeah.
But he's
everyone's
quirky
favorite.
And weird.
Who says that they love Dr. Grant more than Malcolm?
I like Sam Neill over it. Yeah. So anyway, and seeing what Jeff Goldblum has lived into with his other like his eccentricities.
Yeah, this just seems like him.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not acting, man. You are definitely leaning hard into like that.
Yeah, because a few years later, it is Independence Day, and he's not like this.
No,
like he's an actual actor and doing his own thing, and no, he is not.
But he's circled back real hard,
yeah,
to Ian Malcolm in real life. But anyway, so yeah, okay, John Williams. Let's talk about him.
No, I guess for me, I think like we have talked about John Williams. I mean Williams many times in the past on this. But like I look back and I think like John Williams not being twice nominated in this year is really just a crime. And I mean, like, I know I went off on a big not on this episode rant about the Emmys recently and their multiple nominations of people and things like that. I get that, but like I look at like it was The Remains of the Day, Age of Innocence, which Elmer Bernstein I get. Sure. The Firm and The Fugitive score is outstanding, by the way. So I mean, I get that, but like, let's face it, Schindler's List was always going to win.
Yes,
so like,
no doubt.
I understand in that sense. Like, you maybe don't, what is it? Pee in the pool. Like, I get it.
You're getting your win,
right? He's getting it either way. But this score is arguably, in my opinion, one of the top. No, this is how good John Williams is anyway. The top memorable scores of his.
Yes.
Then I wrote down like E.T., Jaws, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. Oh shit! Like I was like,
you're like,
oh my god! Like this guy is so incredibly great. But this score has multiple themes, and that's what Williams does. That's what the best of them do. You have like a soft theme, you have a big theme, and variations on the same theme, but then actually they're like two different ones. Right. I mean, it is so recognizable. And then you're not even talking about Schindler's List at this point. Like, just it is astonishing to me that one person can come up with so much creativity.
Yeah.
And do it in such a way that everyone knows it. Like, you talked about Ev, your son.
Yes.
Humming it or something. Like, you're just like,
randomly was
really
like, humming.
You're just like humming Jurassic Park. But even my kid understands, like, as we're going through, and I'll hear him, we'll talk about Star Wars and he'll talk about the theme, or he'll say it, or Indiana Jones and he'll hum it or whatever, and you're just like, what more can be said about this man than what already has? But it is, this for me is a top Williams score, because it is so. Now, this goes to bias, though, of just like, it really does bring out that sort of visceral reaction whenever I hear it.
Yeah.
But, oh my God, it's incredible.
And to that point, what maybe I'll not end on, but just outline how insane
we gotta end at some point.
Is it that Spielberg had this movie and Schindler's List?
Yeah.
I just still am baffled by that.
Yep.
And if you think about, in a 6-month period, 7-ish, whatever, the man changed movie making forever. Truly. I think it's
pop culture and dramatic.
Yes. Yep. Like the technology for this movie and what they could accomplish from practical and digital effects changed everything thereafter.
Yeah, him and hundreds of other people.
Sure.
Let's just be honest.
Very true.
Yes. But
all
on
like,
a high level scenario.
Yes. The movie itself. And then 7 months later releases one of the best movies in terms of the like visceral experience of that. I mean, so I am always amazed by 93 to think about what Spielberg did.
Oh, we're gonna come back to that, baby.
Yeah, so I
got trivia based on it.
I can't wait. So anyway, we could talk forever about this, but that's
but even Williams, like, you talking about Spielberg with that. Now Williams comes out and he does these score after score after score multiple times in a year, and like to do this and make them. Now we know, like, he's not perfect. They're not infallible.
No.
Like, there are, he rips himself off blatantly across the board, as all composers do in film. You know, like, Hook and Harry Potter are so similar.
Yeah.
Like, you got to listen back to them and all this other stuff. I get it. But there is, again, E.T., Jaws, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and this. And then Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Those 5 or 6 films do not have, if you listen to them, they are different amongst each other.
Yep.
And if you were to pull any other film composer, their 5 best scores, at best, 3 of them will sound similar. They're great, but they're still gonna pirate off each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. So as we close out our spotlight segment, we come to our final takes, called The Verdict.
I'm going up there. I'm going to try it. I'm going to let the jury decide.
This is where Tim and I give our final verdicts after watching the film and decide whether or not the movie held up over the course of 2 decades.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Done.
Sorry. Like, it's a difference in kind for our efforts for this. From it's like, it is what it is. Like, if you somehow have not, anyway, enjoy your cave you live in. It's incredible. Dear God. Sign up for it. What the?
Tell me how it is in your cave.
Yeah.
Actually, in a lot of ways, I envy you.
Yeah. How do you decorate it? I'm always asking that. But anyway, this movie is, again, most formative movie going experience in my life. Top 1. It's incredible. 5 out of 5. No notes. Quibbles aside.
I think 5 out of 5 from an enjoyment standpoint.
Yes.
From a filmmaking standpoint, from an actual quality of like craft.
Like 4.5.
Yeah, I have 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is just to say, like, what more can be said about this movie that has not already been said?
Yep.
Basically, it boils down to this movie not only helped form our love for film, but did so for millions of others like us.
Yep.
Attention to detail may have been lacking at times, but when you are trying to make something special, sometimes there are things that get lost in the shuffle.
Yes.
Game of Thrones and the Starbucks cup. In the end, the filmmakers achieved exactly what they set out to do, which is to make a modern-day King Kong-style film and make it for all audiences. What can be bad about that? I have 4.5. I have 4.5 out of 5 from a film set, but 5 out of 5 in the sense of I've probably seen this movie more than any other movie in my lifetime.
Yep.
Like it's an annual rewatch.
It's so good.
Classic. All right. Well, with our reactions to the movie out of the way, we move on to our reactions to our beers that we drank while rewatching the movie. So that brings us then to our beer reactions segment. They affectionately call Drinking Buddies the sequel.
Let's get weird.
Where we take a look back at our beers and give our expert ratings. Tim, what do we got?
From Off Color Brewing out of Chicago, their Apex Predator Farmhouse Ale, which outlines the secret techniques they offer are...
When did they stop calling Saison's farm? Like, what?
I don't know.
Has it always been a thing? Like Saison always, it's the same, right?
It's a pendulum swing.
Okay,
exactly.
all
Yeah,
right.
same thing. But they say the secret techniques are free rise fermentation and prey selection. And
P-R-E-Y or
yeah,
P-R-A-Y?
E-Y.
I mean, that's a fundamental difference.
But even the
between those
can
two words.
says Saison, dry hopped. So yeah, it's just like, all right, it's a smattering of stuff. I had a 4 for me. It's a very solid style. I had never had it before. I was excited to try it, and I can see why this is a flagship.
It's a solid
for
beer.
Yep,
it's really
tasty.
Saison's farmhouse ales, like, boy, I do remember about 5-6 years ago when we were started drinking these, like, and kind of heading out to breweries and seeing these. It was always like I remember not liking Saison's at all. Like, oh, it's like a weird grassy flavor to it. I don't know, but this is a solid. I don't know if it's a dry hop side or whatever. I have a 4 out of 5 as well. In fact, like, just spoiler alert, I think this might be one of our better beer nights that we've had in a while.
Yeah,
in terms of overall quality,
I agree.
But I have 4 out of 5 as well.
It's very good. And then from Junkyard out of Moorhead, they had their Pulposaurus New England style IPA with Citron Eldorado, 3.75 for me. And the whole thing we always talked about with Junkyard is like, it was ahead of the curve in so many ways, and yet the curve is caught up. So for me, I was like, yeah, I like this, but I don't ever really seek out Junkyard right now.
Yeah, we're gonna come to this in King Sue, and I agree.
Sure.
But I actually couldn't remember the name. It says insert Junkyard name here. That's what I couldn't remember.
Not redacted, but
it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's just like I have 375.
Yep,
that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Right, but they all taste the same. We have this with Black Stack here. We talked about it before. Like, it's fine. Yep. It tastes exactly like all the other Junkyards that you ship. We have same with out of Fargo. Who am I thinking of?
Drecker.
Yep. Same shit.
Yep.
It's
exactly.
Fine. Same stuff.
Yeah.
Stop
and
brewing the same beer.
They're always in the brewery or the liquor store, and I never buy them.
Not anymore, but 4 years ago we bought them all the time.
All the rage.
Again, we'll get back to King Sue here because I actually think what you talked about on King Sue is actually better than it is with Pulposaurus.
Yes.
But yeah.
Then we had Lupulin Brewing, their Sticky Puddles Pina Colada Imperial Sour. For me, it was the 3.75.
Ooh.
And a few caveats. The flavor was really good for me, in my view. Like the pineapple and the coconut cream flavor, I liked it. Again, Tall Boys, it's 9%. And I had to dump the last.
You did?
I did.
Oh,
the last fourth for me.
Huh?
Not too much. I didn't do that crazy, but it's definitely. It's probably the second to whatever it was we had. That one of theirs.
The very first one, the berry
something. Yeah.
Yep. That was because that was
far
both
and
of our
away
best sour of that year.
The best.
Yep.
But this, I like it. It's just again, Tall Boys, tone it down for me. But yeah, 3.75 for me.
All right, Grandpa.
Yeah, no,
well, I had 4.25 out of 5. I love this. This is outside of that first Sticky Puddles. This is the best sour that Lupin has put out. Flavor was good. The smell was good. Like everything about it was really, really solid. It wasn't too tart.
Yep.
And this is the deal. Like we've talked about this with Brewing Project. Now that first Pina Colada milkshake IPA, Resist, is a different story.
Yes.
But we've had a whole lot from them. Like it's that milk sugar or whatever, and it pours chunky, and it's got shit in the bottom of the beer. This isn't that.
Totally agree. Yep.
Like
it was
so
very
like,
clean.
It's got it wasn't too tart. It wasn't like I will go find this 4-pack and buy it for at home. Like it is.
Yeah.
I have 425. This is for me. This is the best Sticky Puddles except for that original one,
Nice.
that berry one.
You can have one of mine. But anyway.
Nice.
Then we had King Sue from Toppling Goliath. Their double IPA. It was a 4 for me. And I must say, I think I had this held in high regard in my memory. Like I think I actually looked at Untapped when I was finding it, and it was like the legend lives up to the hype and whatever crap I was putting.
Yeah, but that was like 6-7 years ago, probably.
It was 6-7 years ago,
right?
It's still good, but for me, it's like it's kind of like Junkyard in some ways for me. Of like, yep, it's kind of rinse and repeat. They've gotten really big, but it was good, but it didn't hold the same level of like difference maker in my view. So yeah, a 4 for me.
So going back to Pulposaurus on this is why I have a 4.25 out of 5 on this, in that this beer is actually the same as what it always has been. And to your point, yeah, the industry has caught up to it. Pulposaurus came out long after King Sue, long after Pseudo Sue, and these other ones.
Yeah.
So I do have a 4.25 because of when this came out. Every year it would come out. And it would be a 4-pack, and it would be like $20 freaking, and we would happily pay that money.
Yep.
Because it was unlike anything that was out there. So I will say the market caught up to it, but this started it. Like this, I have the same thing with Pliny the Elder.
Yes.
It is not as good as what the
legend,
the rave is, but that's because we came after the fact.
Yes.
But like for those of us like this is our Pliny the Elder, in a sense of we used to have to seek this out. It was hard to find. This tastes the same as it always has.
Yep.
Whereas Pulposaurus comes out and it's the same as what came out before it from Junkyard. What came out from they're just copying. It's rinse and repeat.
Yes.
King Sue was early on in this, so I will give Toppling Goliath credit.
True.
Still super enjoyable, really flavorful.
Yeah.
I have a 4.25. I'm that doesn't mean I'm gonna like seek it out or spend all this extra money on it because there's local options, but I Toppling is a really good brewery, and I have to give them credit for that. And this isn't a new release. This is like this has been around for a decade now. I mean, like, so I got to give a little bit of credit of that.
I'm very happy this brewery did not exist when I was there for school.
You never would have graduated.
Well, and I would have been even more poor in college. Of like, I got no money for anything, but I'm gonna buy their beer. So yes, it's great.
All right. Well, our final segment of the episode is Quiz Show.
The exciting quiz program 21.
Where in our research for the film, we find some interesting trivia nuggets that we hope will stump the other and possibly intrigue you, our dear listeners. Very tough to find trivia for such a well-known and culturally significant film.
Yep.
But we'll give it a shot. I actually found a way into some really weird...
Ooh.
I have a lot. I guess I'll ask them. I don't know how many I'll use in our final edit here. But I kind of went down some rabbit holes here. Like, I will admit. So I end up with... Well, I asked you about the Foghorn Leghorn one in mid-movie because I was going to use that one.
That was good.
I end up with 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5.
Oh my gosh, I have 3. 4 if I want to push it, but wow. I'm impressed.
Well...
All right, you start.
Okay, well, we talked about John Williams. We'll start with this one. We love our Oscars trivia and our John Williams here on 20 Years, 4 Beers. So John Williams is the most nominated living person with 53 total nominations, likely coming up to 54 with Indiana Jones 5, spanning 55 years beginning in 1968 with Valley of the Dolls and up to last year's wonderful film, but meh score in The Fabelmans. Actually, the score is fine. It just shouldn't have been up for an Oscar.
It's so small.
Yet remarkably, Tim, he has only, quote unquote, walked away with 5 wins out of those 53 nominations. And believe it or not, just 2 wins in either of our lifetimes, which is incredible. E.T. and Schindler's List. So can you name the 1972 musical that was the first Oscar win for John Williams?
No. I'm so amazed at that trivia. I have a musical that he did music for.
1972. It was up for Best Picture. It's very well known. You'll know it.
You're gonna,
If
what
I
is it?
were a rich man.
Oh, yes, Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah.
Yes. Dang,
Fiddler on the Roof.
Right. Yes.
His other two wins were, of course, Jaws and Star Wars.
Yes.
So yeah, only 5. I mean, I'm just saying, out of 53, only 5. But there you go.
He definitely gets nominated. He put the score out.
He farts on film. He's gonna get a nomination. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. Best outtake of all time.
There you go.
Oh, it's so good. Wow. So I like this trivia for like the insanity that it, like context wise. Jurassic Park became the highest grossing film of all time that year.
Yep.
Surpassing the previous record holder, a film Spielberg also directed that was released just over a decade prior to this, E.T.
Right.
It also set a new record at its time of release, becoming the first film to generate how many $1 million in a single weekend?
100, wasn't it?
It was $50 million.
Oh, wow.
Now, 105 for inflation. But at the weekend, think about that. And it was a record-breaking $50 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
Now that's like a flop.
Yeah. Well, it just did.
Yes.
Indiana Jones did $60 million and was considered a flop.
Yeah. But how
is
crazy
bullshit.
is that? So yeah, $50 million.
Okay, well, speaking of, it's funny how we talk about box office. Steven Spielberg is a pretty famous and financially successful director. I don't know if you've heard of this person before, but his films have grossed over $10 billion at the global box office.
Wow.
How many of his films have ended as the highest grossing film in box office history?
Well, I guess 2. Yeah, 2.
Which
2?
You're wrong, but which 2 are you? Yeah.
I guess my question was E.T. I don't know.
Well, you already had 2. You had E.T.
E.T. and Jurassic Park.
And Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And he had 1 prior to that.
Jaws.
Jaws was,
yes. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, 3.
Yep.
Curse is
Jaws
Tim.
in 75 outgrossed The Godfather,
that. Yeah,
E.T. outgrossed Star Wars, and Jurassic Park outgrossed E.T.
3. Dang
there
it.
You go.
Oh, Jaws, man. The kids were asking about that recently, and we're like,
"Oh, my kid wants to
hard
watch
pass."
it." Like I told Matt, I'd be like, "I'll watch it with you." He's like, well, no, "Wait, what?" Once I agreed to watch it with him,
sure.
It's like, "Yeah, you can try this beer." Wait, what?
Yeah,
can I?
You gotta drink the whole thing. You can't stop. Which side note, really quick, you can cut it, whatever. Kids recently in the neighborhood were hanging out, and they were talking like they're the same age as my kids, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we watched Jaws, all 3 of them. No big deal. It's like maybe a hand." I'm like, "You're straight up lying, you little shit."
Yeah, I agree.
Because that movie, if you truly watched it, is terrifying.
Oh Matt's friends were like, "Oh, I watched it. It had no problem."
Oh, yeah.
No, you didn't.
You're lying.
No, you didn't.
Yes.
You were at that time 12 years old. You did not watch it. You liar.
It's a no big deal.
You should be taken away from your
yes,
parents.
I have massive concerns about your stability. Yes. So apparently Spielberg cast Wayne Knight as Dennis Nedry after seeing his creepy portrayal of an assistant DA in what 1992 suspense film starring Sharon Stone.
Basic Instinct.
Yes. I love it's like
good little Wayne Knight.
Basic Instinct, Jurassic Park, Newman.
Yeah, Seinfeld. Yeah, we're fine.
That's all.
And then Space Jam about the same time. You know, there you go.
Yeah, that's what people know him from.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think we discussed this, but Spielberg and his crew completed filming on Jurassic Park in November of 1992. 12 days ahead of schedule, actually. But he had to quickly shift gears and concentrate on shooting and completing his next film, Schindler's List, which would go into production in March of 93. Spare a thought of the fact that though both those movies released in 93, he didn't even really start until early in 93. Anyway, of it. Because of the tight shooting schedule on that film and the extensive post-production needed for Jurassic Park, he handed over some post-production responsibilities to what classic director?
George Lucas.
There you go. Yeah.
I
I
only
like
know
we
that.
talked about this before, but
I only know because he was on Smart List, the podcast, and he talked about that.
Oh,
and I had no idea until then. Where he's like, "Yeah, hey George, I need to go to Poland.
Yeah,
can you finish the movie for me?
Yeah. Yeah. So you got a special thanks on the credits or
It's
whatever.
so great. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
I love
to think
the
about.
relationship. Yeah.
Like, so screenwriter David Coop has written films we covered in the pod already. So Panic Room and Spider-Man. And I would say did a solid job of adapting Crichton's novel
Especially
for
when
this.
you consider the source material. For
Condensing
sure.
it.
Yep.
He also co-wrote the screenplay for another major franchise starter in 1996, as well as the screenplay for 2 films in a different major franchise, both of which had their most recent installments released in the past few weeks. What are those franchises?
What? Huh? Wait a second here. 1996.
Think about the movies we talked about in the opening.
I know, but now I'm like, wait, what? What are we talking about? Mission Impossible?
He did.
In the first one?
Yep.
Okay. And what was the second part of that question?
2 major films or 2 films in a different major franchise. The most recent one released.
I can't think of
over
the second
4th.
one. What is it?
Indiana Jones.
He did?
He co-wrote Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull, the one I'm surprised you even referenced that.
I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to reference it. And then, yes, co-wrote it.
Right.
Dial of Destiny.
All right, I'll take that L.
Yeah, but think about that. Like, how crazy that Jurassic Park.
That is crazy.
And then
Co-op has made a great
major
career
franchises
out of this.
Yes.
Man, we are an hour 15. All right.
For this movie,
that's fine. No, that's fine. I have 2 more.
I'm done.
Man.
I'm tapped out.
I love these. Okay. Be ready here. All right. So kind of a quirky trivia here. So follow me in here. It is pretty rare for directors to release multiple films in 1 year, let alone releasing 2 well-respected classic films such as Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, as Spielberg did in 1983. Both films were nominated for a combined 15 total Oscars, by the way.
Sure.
I looked back and found some pretty impressive filmmakers who released multiple films in 1 year.
Did you now?
Oh, yeah, I did. Including, by the way, John Huston, Alfred Hitchcock twice, Oliver Stone, John Hughes, Ridley Scott, Clint Eastwood, Steven Soderbergh, all released 2 films in 1 year.
Sure.
However, they didn't quite match up to this caliber, right? But I will say, in a weird coincidence, in 1974, this feat was accomplished by 2 all-time directors, one of which had 2 films nominated for 14 Oscars combined, and the other is arguably had 2 all-time classic comedies. So you have a drama and comedy in 1974. Care to guess? 2 of these all-time greatest directors. If you think of the mid-70s.
Francis Ford Coppola.
Correct. For The Godfather Part 2 and The Conversation. I'm not going to ask you for those 2.
I would have
14 Oscar nominations between those 2 and 15 for like Spielberg. By what I could find, Spielberg's were the most in combination. But yeah, you will say what now?
Well, I was going to say, I would have guessed The Godfather Part 2, but I would not have gotten that conversation.
Yeah, it was it was like...
And the other director...
A comedy director in the 1970s. I'm
going to say Woody Allen.
No.
I have no idea.
Mel Brooks.
Brooks!
Released Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein in 1974.
Same year?
Same year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird little like, you have Oscars on one side and cultural zeitgeist films on the other. Yeah, both of them were in 1974.
That's really good. Good trivia.
Oh, you're going to love this one then.
Oh, man. Okay, let me buckle up.
Buckle the frick up, man.
Hold on.
All right, man. While this film, Jurassic Park, is very different than the novel it is based on, one way they are the same is that both in the book and in the movie, the tour is narrated by none other than Richard Kiley. Spared no expense. And Spielberg brought the veteran stage and TV actor in to do the narration. Kiley was not much of a film actor, but he did win 4 Emmy Awards to his credit. He also won 2 Tony Awards as Best Actor in a Musical. One in 1959 for a musical nobody's heard of called Redheads, and the other in 1966 for what musical? Based on a novel by Miguel de Cervantes. Come on, man. I just gave you the hint. Come on. You're a book guy.
I haven't read all the books. Yeah.
Come on.
So I have no idea.
Man of La Mancha, Don Quixote.
Oh, really?
I am Don Quixote, the Lord of La Mancha. My destiny calls and I go. And the wild winds of fortune shall carry me onward, oh, whithersoever they blow.
Wow. Okay.
Did you not have to sing that back in middle school and high school?
I did, but yes.
Come on. I am Sancho. Richard Kelly, I'll tell you.
I love that trivia.
I'm gonna play that. You're gonna go.
God.
I'm gonna play that song, and you're gonna go. Holy shit, that's totally.
I
Richard
do
Kelly.
remember that song, but I would not have thought about that.
Man of La Mancha, baby.
Wow.
I'm his friend.
Richard Kelly.
Man,
I went deep.
You had some good time on your hands.
It wasn't even. I was like, how do you find trivia on a movie we've seen dozens and dozens of times?
Yes.
And it's such a part of the cultural perspective. Like, I don't know. I was like, there we go.
Yep.
So that'll bring us to the end of this episode. Stay tuned for our upcoming 30 Years, 4 Beers Happy Hour on Dazed and Confused. And for episodes later on Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, and a happy hour we still haven't figured out at this point. Be sure to find all of our previous episodes on your favorite streaming platform. We want to say thank you for taking the time to listen and for clicking that like or subscribe button on your devices. Find us on Twitter at years_beers, on Facebook, or now on Threads. And head to 20years4beers.com. This has been 20 Years 4 Beers. My name is Steve.
I'm Tim.
And thanks for listening.
Buckle up.
Buckle the frick up, man.
That ain't right.
He farts on film. He's gonna get a nomination.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's so huge.
Cut! Cut! Cut!